All right, so looking at the obstacles you saw from the statistics, from the video, it's hard to imagine what life was like when this war ended. People were obviously relieved, especially those in the north, that the war is over, the fighting has stopped, that we can rebuild, but the obstacles almost look impossible at this point. We think about the problems in today's society. It's hard to compare that anything was even close to as bad as it was back then. And there were a lot of obstacles that you saw when you looked at fact statistics, the video. We talk about financial ruin of the South. Pretty much their economy is no good. Their money's no good. So how are you going to rebuild that? There are huge obstacles. But I'm going to talk about four that are huge, that are probably the biggest obstacles that they're going to have to overcome going into Reconstruction. So you're going to fill in the graphic organizer. We'll go from the top left, then we'll go to the top right, then bottom left, then bottom right. So the first one is physical destruction. So you can write that in the box above the picture. Physical destruction is your first huge obstacle that they're going to have to overcome. And just quick note of this, 90%, you can write this below the picture, 90% of the South's rail lines had been destroyed, along with mills and warehouses. I mean, it was physically decimated. By the time the end of the war came, really the Union's goal, especially with Sherman, if you talked about Sherman's last march, Sherman's March to the Sea last year with Mr. Hepburn during the Civil War, they went all out in really psychological warfare. They said, we're just going to destroy the South. We're going to destroy its landscape. We're going to destroy homes, businesses, crops, everything, to break them psychologically to want to quit. And that's what they did. Well, now that the war is over, now you have to rebuild that. Okay, you've destroyed 90% of your transportation lines in the South because you don't have vehicles yet. That's your main way to transport goods. You don't have that anymore. The South is just absolutely decimated. So that's the first one. The next one, upper right-hand corner, wounded soldiers. And then all you have to write below the picture is thousands, really hundreds of thousands of Confederate soldiers were disabled by their wounds. Hundreds of thousands of Confederate soldiers were disabled by their wounds. Okay, you saw the facts and statistics when you watched the video, when you looked at the actual in-print statistics there, and just how many people were killed and wounded. And it doesn't seem like a ton, right, when we talk about the single-digit percentage, but if you did today's population, you're talking millions of people, right? And we've lost, I think it's 10 to 15,000 in the Iraq War, and that's been fought for, over a decade. So it's just astonishing. And really the problem is with wounded soldiers, why this is a huge obstacle for us is because we didn't have things such as disability, a way to replace people. If you can't work and you're disabled, you're pretty much screwed. They didn't have unemployment. They didn't have disability. The government didn't take care of people who didn't work, right? And during this time, only men worked. So you're going to start to see the roles have to reverse, right? Where women are going to have to step it up or their families are not going to be able to survive, right? So wounded soldiers is another huge obstacle. What are you going to do with these wounded soldiers? How are they going to be able to provide for their family? How are you going to help them to provide for their family? The next one is freedmen. That's all you got to write, freedmen. And at the bottom, nearly 4 million freedmen would be landless, jobless, and uneducated. So it's great. We've ended slavery with the 13th Amendment. It is wonderful. It's one of the greatest amendments of all time. But what are you going to do for all these people? Because now they're displaced. Now they're considered a refugee. They've been kicked out of their plantation. Many of them willingly have left, of course. What are you going to do with them? Because the Emancipation Proclamation, I don't know if you learned about this last year, but Lincoln freed a lot of people, the Emancipation Proclamation in the South, and he had no plan. And thousands starved to death, died of disease because they couldn't get medical care. Hundreds of thousands of African Americans died because the Emancipation Proclamation had no plan in effect. So now you need to prevent that. They've learned from that. It's been a couple years. What are you going to do with all these freedmen? How are you going to protect them? You think whites are happy that they're property is no longer considered property. They have to pay for labor, right? So this is probably the biggest of the obstacles, but yes, it's huge. It is huge. What are you going to do? 4 million people. And then lastly, reuniting the North and the South. How are you going to do it? These people have been trying to kill each other for almost half a decade, right? So how are you going to reunite them? So the last one is reuniting the North and the South. How are you going to reunite? Two sides have been trying to kill each other for the last several years. Obviously a huge, huge obstacle. What are you going to do?